Hey guys, tonight we're traveling far, far back, beyond your screen's soft glow, to a world ruled by the river, by rhythm, by heat, and by the quiet hum of crickets in the papyrus reeds. You stand beneath a sky the color of crushed lapis lazuli, the air thick with the scent of silt and myrrh, and in the distance, torches shimmer against mud brick walls. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where the nights stretch long and calm, and where, believe it or not, humanity might just have invented the very first board game. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night is warm. You're somewhere along the western bank of the Nile, where the river glimmers like poured bronze. The sounds of frogs and the slow creak of boats rock the village to sleep. In the dim light of an oil lamp, two men sit cross-legged on a woven mat. Between them, etched roughly into a plank of wood, lies a narrow board divided into 30 squares. Their fingers hover over carved tokens, polished smooth from touch. One man grins, the other squints, muttering a prayer to the goddess Hathor. A small stick clatters to the floor, marking his move. You've just witnessed a moment of history, one that repeats itself through millennia. The first known board game, called Senet, was born here around 5,000 years ago. But before it became a noble pastime, before it found its way into the tombs of pharaohs, it began as something humbler, a way to pass the evening, to test fate, to fill those long Egyptian nights when the desert cooled and the stars came alive. Historians still argue whether Senet began as pure entertainment or as a ritual to appease the gods. But one thing's certain, Egyptians played. They played a lot. And in a world ruled by cycles, of flooding and harvest, of birth and death, games became more than amusement. They were reflections of life itself. You walk past clay homes where children laugh, flicking pebbles across drawn lines in the dust. The Nile murmurs softly nearby. The grown-ups, done hauling water and weaving baskets, gather to watch a game unfold. Laughter drifts, low and warm, mixing with the scent of roasted barley. It feels human, familiar. You've seen the same scene at bus stops, cafes, airport lounges, maybe even in your own living when someone swears they're not a sore loser. Now imagine this scene repeating for centuries, passed down from farmer to scribe, from priest to king. The Nile doesn't rush, it meanders, steady and unhurried, shaping civilization with its patient tides. In the same way, these early games shaped human thought. They taught logic, anticipation, humility in loss. They whispered lessons about destiny, chance, and control. You picture a young apprentice scribe, his fingers stained with ink, playing a quick round of Senet before bedtime. To him, it's not just fun, it's a lesson in focus. Each move is a dance between choice and fate. He slides a piece forward, frowns, and scratches his head. His teacher chuckles softly. Even Thoth, god of wisdom, he says, must play his moves carefully. The next morning, that same apprentice will help record harvest tallies, inscribe prayers, or chart the stars. But tonight, he's simply a boy trying to outwit a friend. That duality between the sacred and the ordinary is what made Egyptian culture so mesmerizing. The ancient Egyptians had a word for play, menet, which could also mean to pass through or to traverse. In that sense, every move across a board might symbolize a soul's journey through the afterlife. When you roll, or rather toss, the sticks that served as dice. You're not just playing for fun. You're guiding your piece, your spirit, through obstacles, hoping to reach the final safe space, the eternal field of reeds. Even in this calm, candlelit night, superstition lingers. One player murmurs to the goddess Ma'at, begging for balance, for justice in his next move. The other smirks, tapping his piece 3 times for luck. The stakes are low, maybe a loaf of bread or a jug of beer, but the tension feels almost cosmic. You can almost smell the burning oil, the papyrus smoke, the sweat of the players as they lean closer, eyes glinting towards the board design, onto ostraca, a clay shard, perhaps for practice, or maybe just out of fascination. Centuries later, archaeologists will find that same shard buried in sand, puzzling over its markings, unsure if it was for art or play. Historians still debate that. And here's the quirky part. Some scholars think the game might have been used to tell fortunes. The toss of the sticks, the landing of a token, these could have been omens. A lucky roll might mean good harvest, safe passage, or favor from the gods. An unlucky one, well, maybe it's best not to question why. Your token just got sent back 3 spaces. In a way, these people were doing what we still do today, projecting hope onto randomness. You shuffle a deck of cards, they tossed a handful of sticks, same human heartbeat underneath. Maybe that's why this story feels strangely comforting. You sit back, feeling the faint desert wind on your face. Somewhere in the distance, a crocodile slips into the Nile with a quiet splash. The stars above look ancient. Unchained, down the path, another family begins their own game, laughing softly. They'll play until the lamps burn low and the cool night wraps the village in sleep. It's easy to romanticize these scenes, but Egypt wasn't all serenity and moonlit games. Tomorrow, there will be taxes to pay, tombs to carve, irrigation channels to clear. Life was demanding, relentless even. But for now, beneath this silver moon, the only thing that matters is whether your piece lands safely in the next square. And maybe that's the secret. Ancient Egyptians didn't just invent board games. They invented a way to momentarily escape the weight of eternity. The first thing you notice in the morning is how the light seems to shimmer, not just reflect. The Nile catches the sunrise like molten gold, and you can almost feel the heat sneaking up from the riverbanks. Around you, life hums awake. Farmers shout softly to their oxen, women grind grain between stones, and children chase each other through narrow alleys. But your attention drifts instead to a quieter corner, a small workshop where something truly human and a little magical is happening. Mild, tasty, impecful. Inside, an old craftsman sits cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by small piles of clay, polished stones, and splinters of wood. He hums softly, rolling a lump of clay between his palms until it becomes smooth and round. Then, with a reed stylus, he presses faint markings into its surface. Not hieroglyphs, something simpler. Perhaps tally marks, perhaps symbols of fortune. He sets it aside to dry in the sunlight. This, you realize, is where play begins. Not in temples or palaces, but in hands like his. Hands that understand earth, texture, patience. Those humble clay discs, those smooth river pebbles, are the earliest game pieces of humankind. And in true Egyptian fashion, even the simplest things carry the scent of eternity. Historians still argue whether these objects were made for entertainment, divination, or ritual. But either way, they represent something remarkable. The moment humans turned the randomness of nature into something they could hold, move, and, at least for a few hours, control. It's the same instinct that makes you roll dice in a board game today, secretly hoping the universe is listening to your wish. As you watch, the craftsman's grandson joins him, clutching a stick. The boy drops a few small bones, sheep's knuckles, onto the ground, and claps when they land in just the right pattern. You smile. This is the ancestor of dice, the oldest randomizer known to humankind. Egyptian children, it seems, were natural gamblers long before Vegas was a sparkle in anyone's eye. One of the old man's neighbors pokes her head in, amused. "Playing with fate again?" she teases. He grins, wiping clay dust from his fingers. "Better than letting fate play with me." You can't help but laugh quietly. It's the kind of dry humor that could still hold up today. That's the thing about Egypt. Everything feels layered. A clay disc isn't just a toy. A pebble isn't just a pebble. Every small object, every repeated motion carries some echo of the divine. When a player tosses their gaming pieces, it's not just chance they're inviting. It's the gods themselves. Later, in temple ceremonies, you'd see priests casting small tokens to interpret omens or to predict outcomes in rituals. The act looks suspiciously similar to a game of Senet. Historians still debate whether religion borrowed from play or play borrowed from religion. Maybe it doesn't matter. The two were always intertwined, like sunlight and shadow on the Nile. You crouch down beside the craftsman's workbench. A row of small molds sits drying in the sun. You can make out faint shapes, squares, eyes, spirals. Aren't decorative. They mean something. Some represent protection, others rebirth or victory. In Egyptian thinking, art and purpose are inseparable. A game piece wasn't merely an object. It was alive with intention. When you pick one up, it's still warm from the sun, smooth as a river pebble. You feel the faint fingerprints of the man who made it 5,000 years ago. That's the quiet miracle of archaeology, to touch what someone once made for joy. The boy gathers a few finished pieces and brings them to his mother's home. Inside, she traces squares in the dirt with her fingertip and sets the pieces in place. No fancy board, no carved wood, just dust and imagination. You sit with them as they play. The rules? Well, no one's written them down yet. It's all instinct. Advance, retreat, block, win. When the mother wins, she lets her son roll again anyway. She says it's for good luck. He giggles, and you're reminded that kindness in play is older than any recorded law. Outside, a group of fishermen debate the merits of different materials for tokens. Clay for cheapness, wood for smoothness, ivory for prestige. One man even claims crocodile teeth make the best pieces. Another laughs. Then I'll let you fetch them. There's your third joke of the day. Dark humor, Egyptian style. These people, though long gone, seem startlingly modern. They innovate constantly, finding new ways to make the mundane exciting. They understand randomness, probability, even strategy, centuries before the concept of game theory was born, and their materials reflect their world. The Nile gives clay, the desert gives stone, the animals give bone. Nothing goes to waste. You watch as the craftsman's grandson dips a stick into soot and marks tiny symbols on each clay disc, just enough to differentiate. One for the river, he says. One for the desert, one for the sky. He rolls them again, watching where they fall. The universe, he thinks, has spoken. The rhythmic clatter of those falling discs fills the air, a small, satisfying sound. Imagine lying in your bed, half asleep, hearing that faint tapping, the sound of the world's first dice game. It's soothing, repetitive, strangely hypnotic. The old craftsman, done for the day, stretches and looks out toward the river. A boat glides past, loaded with reeds. He squints at the distant horizon and mutters something about how even the gods must get bored sometimes. That's why they gave us games, he says, to remind us we're still alive between the floods. You lean against the doorway and watch the sunlight shift over his workbench. Those same small pebbles and bones will one day inspire the great royal boards of Senet, the spiral coils of Mehen, and even the grids and dice we still use now. It's humbling to think that what began as a casual pastime by the Nile became one of humanity's oldest traditions. That somewhere between labor and prayer, between dust and divinity, people learned the joy of pretending, if only for a moment, that they could outsmart chance itself. You breathe in, the air warm and full of clay dust. The old man yawns, his grandson still rolling bones in the sand. The Nile keeps whispering. Somewhere, a heron calls. And as you close your eyes, you realize that this simple act of play is one of the first sparks of imagination ever recorded. The afternoon air is thick, the kind that feels more like honey than air, clinging to your skin as you make your way toward a small courtyard behind the artisan's quarter. There's a faint rhythm echoing from within, wood tapping on wood, laughter, the low hum of voices discussing moves, mistakes, and divine luck. You peek through the doorway. There it is, the object that will outlast dynasties. A neatly carved rectangular board, 30 squares long, each etched with careful precision. This is Senet, the world's oldest known board game. Its name means passing or passing through, a fitting description for both gameplay and the Egyptians' eternal obsession with journeys, of the sun, of the soul, of life itself. You settle beside a group of players. An older man with a priest's shaved head, a young servant in linen wrapped too tightly, and a merchant with eyes that dart like a falcon's. Between them lies the board, decorated with symbols, water, birds, zigzags that look almost like pathways. The priest gestures for you to sit, his voice warm and amused. Come, traveler, the gods favor beginners. That's probably not true. You can tell from the way the merchant smirks, but you sit anyway. The priest tosses 4 small sticks onto the table. They clatter, and one lands with its painted side up. That's how far you move. Primitive dice, born from the same spirit of curiosity that drives every game ever made. Historians still argue over the exact rules of Senet, and no one has ever found a complete set of instructions. Some think it resembled backgammon. Others suggest a race game like modern Ludo. And a few believe it mirrored the soul's journey through the underworld. But right now, it's just people playing, living, breathing, teasing each other. You watch as the priest moves a small token forward, a polished ivory piece shaped like a cone. The merchant follows, muttering a quick prayer to the goddess Hathor for luck. You catch a few words about protection and fate, though you suspect he's actually asking for a good roll. When your turn comes, the priest hands you the sticks with a grin. You toss them, and they spin through the air before landing unevenly. 2 flat sides, 2 round sides. You get to move 3 spaces. The priest nods, impressed. A good omen, he says. The gods watch you. You resist the urge to whisper, please don't. Each square on the board, the priest explains, represents a step through life and beyond. The middle squares are neutral, but near the end, the final 5 spaces hold special power. They depict the House of Rebirth, House of Happiness, and the dreaded House of Water, a space that sends unlucky players backward. symbolizing the trials of the afterlife. It's poetic, really. Win the game, and you symbolically conquer death. Lose, and, well, there's always next flood season. A cool breeze stirs the air, carrying the scent of date wine and sandalwood. The players joke lightly about who's most favored by the gods today. One man says, "If my piece reaches the final house, I'm taking the day off tomorrow." The others laugh, probably not the first time someone's tried to use divine gaming success to skip work. The game continues for an hour. Each move is deliberate, each glance filled with subtle rivalry. You start to notice patterns, not just in the game, but in life. The poor play with whatever materials they have, scratching grids into dust. The wealthy play on boards of ebony and ivory, sometimes inlaid with turquoise or gold. But the game itself, that's the great equalizer. Whether your tokens are clay or gemstone, luck doesn't care. Later, the priest leans closer and says softly, "The gods roll with us, you know. They decide who passes through the board." He taps a square marked with a hieroglyph of water. "This," he says, "is where your soul might drown or be reborn." His tone is gentle, almost wistful, as if the act of playing connects him to something vast and unseen. You realize, in that moment, that Senet isn't just a pastime, it's philosophy disguised as fun. To play is to rehearse for the afterlife, to navigate chaos and order, luck and choice, just as one must navigate existence. You make a move and lose a piece. The merchant laughs loudly, slapping his knee. The priest just smiles. "You see," he says, "no one escapes the House of Water forever." Across town, a scribe records something similar on a wall. Scenes of noblemen playing Senet in the afterlife. The carvings show them mid-game, frozen for eternity, their faces serene, as if even in death play continues. Archaeologists will one day uncover those tombs, marveling at how seriously the Egyptians took their games. And yet, the scribe probably just thought it was beautiful, that life's little joys deserved to be immortalized. Here's a quirky detail. Some ancient boards were designed to fold up, portable enough to carry on long journeys. Essentially, Egypt's first travel edition. You can picture two traders aboard a Nile boat, the wind filling their sail. A small Senet board balanced between amphorae of grain. The stakes? Maybe a share of honey or a jar of beer. The laughter? Timeless. As the game draws to a close, the priest wins by a single space. He doesn't gloat, just chuckles soft, gathering his pieces. "The gods favor patience," he says, though you suspect he said that after every victory since the invention of papyrus. Night begins to fall, shadows lengthening across the courtyard. The players rise, stretch, and pack away their boards. The priest bows his head slightly toward the sky. Another night, another passage complete. You sit there a while longer, fingers tracing the smooth edges of the board. The pattern feels familiar. 30 squares, a little universe. The world beyond is full of noise and sand and endless labor. But here, in these few moments, life makes sense. Maybe that's why the Egyptians loved their games so much. When the Nile flooded, when the harvest failed, when God seemed silent, there was still the board, still the roll of chance, the comfort of play, the illusion that you might guide your fate just one square further. And maybe, as you drift toward sleep, you understand why Senet became more than a game. It became a metaphor for living, one slow, deliberate move at a time. The next morning unfolds beneath a soft veil of light. You wake to the rustle of reeds, the steady lap of water against stone, and the distant bleating of goats on the riverbank. Egypt stirs again, as it always does, patient, unhurried, eternal. You walk through narrow streets where dust swirls around your ankles, past children tossing bones and women balancing baskets of grain on their heads. The city hums like a hive, yet somewhere within that gentle chaos, the gods are said to be watching every move. Yours, the priests, even those of the humble game pieces sliding across a board. Today, you learn that in Egypt, not even play is free from the divine. You wander toward a shaded courtyard behind a temple complex where incense smoke curls into the hot air. Inside, 3 priests sit cross-legged around an ornate senate board made of ebony, inlaid with ivory squares that gleam like moonlight. The board rests atop a low table carved with lotus flowers, and at each corner stands a tiny gold falcon, symbol of Horus, the watchful god of kingship and sky. The air smells of myrrh and old parchment. The men are murmuring prayers as they cast their sticks, their movements slow and deliberate. This isn't a casual game, it's a ritual. Each throw, each token's movement is meant to mirror cosmic balance, the eternal struggle between chaos and order. You take a seat in the shadows, trying not to disturb the rhythm. One priest rolls, moves his piece 3 squares, and recites something under his breath, a verse invoking Ma'at, goddess of truth and balance. Another priest shakes his head with a smile. Even in games, he says, Ma'at must prevail. You can't tell if he's being serious or joking. Maybe both. Historians still argue whether Senate was originally a sacred ceremony or simply evolved into one over time. What's clear is that by the New Kingdom era, the game had transformed from mere amusement into something transcendent. To move across the board was to reenact the soul's journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. The final spaces weren't just the house of happiness. They symbolized eternal peace. And if your token failed to reach them, it meant your soul hadn't yet found harmony. The priests continue to play, each move accompanied by soft chanting. The board, one of them says, is the field of reeds. To cross it is to be reborn. He glances toward a mural on the temple wall depicting Osiris, Lord of the afterlife, seated on his throne while souls approach him in humility. The resemblance is unmistakable, each player moving forward, square by square, toward divine judgment. Then comes the quirky part. One of the priests rolls the sticks and frowns at the result. Unfavorable, he mutters. He quickly reaches for a small amulet, an eye of Horus, and touches it to his forehead before trying again. The others chuckle, and one remarks, even Osiris has his off days. You suppress a smile. Some things never change. Even 5,000 years ago, players blamed their luck instead of their strategy. But luck in this world isn't random. It's divine favor. Egyptians believed the gods might literally influence how your dice or sticks landed. Every roll was a conversation with fate, a silent negotiation between mortals and immortals. The temple bells echo outside, and sunlight slants across the floor, catching the gleam of the board. You can almost feel the weight of belief in the air, the conviction that even simple games are threads in the tapestry of creation. The players aren't competing for victory. They're reenacting the cosmic drama of balance, rebirth, and order. The senior priest, his voice barely above a whisper, begins to explain. Each move, he says, is guided by the breath of the gods. When we cast the sticks, we open a path between worlds. The piece that moves forward is the Ba, the soul. The square it lands on is its trial. You lean in as he continues. See this? He points to a square marked with a zigzag pattern, the waters of chaos. To fall here is to risk being lost. But reach the last 5 houses, he adds, and your soul rests forever in the light. You watch as his token glides across the final row, landing neatly on the last square. The others nod solemnly. One murmurs, "May your soul find peace." The priest smiles faintly, at least on the board. Outside, a scribe sketches the scene onto a papyrus scroll, his ink-stained fingers capturing every detail. This, he believes, is worth recording. Future generations will see how their forefathers honored the gods, not just in temples or battles, but in small moments of play and faith intertwined. You step back out into the sunlight, blinking at the brightness. Children are still playing in the sand, tossing pebbles, shrieking with laughter. A young girl watches the priests from afar, her eyes wide with curiosity. One day, she'll grow up to play her own game of Senet, perhaps not in a temple, but with the same quiet reverence. And as you walk along the riverbank, it strikes you how blurred the line is between sacred and ordinary. The Egyptians didn't separate joy from devotion or chance from destiny. Everything was connected. The floods of the Nile, the flight of the heron, the roll of a stick. You stoop to pick up a smooth river stone, feel its cool surface, think of how it might one day become a token in someone's game, a piece in their story. Maybe that's what the Egyptians understood better than anyone, that life itself is a kind of board, and we're all just trying to move, one square at a time, toward balance. The sun dips lower, and the air begins to cool. A boat glides past, its oars dipping rhythmically into the water. The distant laughter of children mixes with the chants still echoing from the temple courtyard. For a fleeting moment, everything feels still, poised between the mundane and the divine, just as it must have felt for every player who ever held their breath, waiting to see how the sticks would fall. You follow the river's edge as afternoon slides into the warm gold of evening. The light softens, and with it, Egypt relaxes. The workers returning from the fields trail along the embankment, their baskets of flax and grain heavy on their shoulders, their songs drifting lazily across the water. You can smell baked mud and freshly ground flour. A dog barks somewhere, but even the sound seems slow, like everything else in this place. This is where leisure begins, not in palaces or temples, but among the ordinary people who spend their days bending under the sun. And when the work is done, when the day's labor finally loosens its grip, they gather to play. A group of men squats in a semicircle on the packed earth outside a beer house. The sweet, sour aroma of fermented barley thickens the air, mingled with sweat and laughter. One man traces lines in the dust with a stick, creating a simple grid, 30 squares again, like the Senate boards of the wealthy. Though here, it's just drawn on the ground. He places small stones for tokens, smooth and worn from river polishing. He looks up and grins. We play like the nobles, but cheaper. You sit beside them, the sand warm under your legs. They toss thin twigs instead of carved sticks, using them to determine moves. The rolls? Flexible, half memory, half invention, but the thrill the same. It's the feeling that you might outwit both your friends and fate itself, that maybe, for an evening, the gods are on your side. The game begins. Pieces shuffle forward and backward. Laughter erupts when someone loses a turn, and the oldest man claims that his token is blessed because it once landed on the House of Happiness. Everyone rolls their eyes. The contrast between palace and peasant is striking. In noble villas, Senate boards gleam with imported ivory, tokens shaped like falcons or pyramids. In villages, people draw the same pattern in dirt, their boards erased each night by the desert wind. Yet both groups play the same game, driven by the same human pulse that longs for story, structure, and a bit of luck. Historians still argue whether the commoners' versions of Senet were simplified imitations or fully separate games that evolved alongside the elites. The line between sacred and social blurred easily here. One family might play to pass the time, another might whisper quiet prayers with each role, asking for protection in childbirth or health for their animals. As you watch, a woman emerges from the beater house carrying a clay jug. She sets it down between the players and laughs. "For the loser," she says. They groan theatrically. She joins them anyway, adjusting her headscarf and marking her piece with a bit of soot so she won't lose track of it. You can't help but smile. The scene is simple, timeless. Even in this ancient dust, there's something familiar. The banter, the teasing, the unspoken ritual of shared time. It's the same kind of laughter you'd hear over a board game in any century. One man slaps his thigh when his piece gets sent back 3 spaces. "I swear the gods have favorites," he mutters. The woman next to him replies, "Maybe they just like watching you lose." The group bursts into laughter again. When the round ends, they scatter handfuls of sand across the board to erase it, like washing away time itself. Soon, there'll be no trace of the game, no record of who won or lost. And yet, that small moment of joy lingers in the air, as real as any temple inscription. Meanwhile, across the river in a noble courtyard, a different sort of game unfolds. Under a canopy of woven linen, a young prince lounges on a cushioned bench, flanked by servants fanning away flies. Before him lies a finely crafted Senate board, its squares inlaid with blue faience and gold. The stakes here are not barley beer, but honor and rumor. Nobles wager on games for sport, but also for gossip, for love, for quiet displays of wit and status. The prince's opponent tonight is a visiting dignitary from Thebes, elegant and proud. The two men trade moves with practiced grace, pretending indifference, even as tension coils between. Around them, courtiers whisper, pretending to discuss politics while keeping one eye on the board. The priest overseeing the match intones softly, "May Ma'at guide fair play." It's half blessing, half warning. The prince wins, barely, and leans back with a self-satisfied grin. "Seems the gods approve of me," he says. His rival smiles thinly. "Or they enjoy your arrogance." Everyone laughs, carefully, politely. The atmosphere relaxes again, and musicians pluck gentle chords on lutes as servants refill the wine cups. It's strange how the same game bridges 2 worlds. For the peasant, Senet offers a taste of luxury, a small rebellion against monotony. For the noble, it's a symbol of culture and grace, a pastime fit for eternity itself. But both share the same thrill, that flutter of uncertainty, that heartbeat before the toss. Even the gods seem to enjoy it. In paintings and tomb reliefs, deities like Ra and Thoth are sometimes shown playing Senet against each other, a divine reflection of mortal habit. Maybe the Egyptians imagined their gods not as distant forces, but as fellow players, sharing the same cosmic game board. As the night deepens, you walk between both worlds, the peasants' dusty laughter and the nobles' golden mirth blending in the warm air. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays, its melody winding through the streets like a lullaby. You pause at the river, watching the moon shimmer on the surface. The current is slow, endless. Maybe that's what Senet taught its players most of all, that life moves like the Nile, full of turns, calm one moment, unpredictable the next. You look down at the water and imagine tossing in one of those small clay tokens. It drifts away, caught in the current, spinning lazily toward the horizon, just another piece in the game of time. The night deepens into a soft hush. The stars above the Nile spill across the sky like grains of crushed alabaster. You are still wandering, the scent of mud and lotus thick in the air, following the quiet glow of torches toward a grand estate. Here, the rich and powerful spend their evenings, not merely playing games, but turning them into ceremonies. You slip past the guards. Don't worry, they're half asleep, and step into a wide courtyard perfumed with jasmine and oil lamps. The floor gleams with polished limestone, and in the center sits a low cedar table carved with intricate patterns. The unmistakable grid of 30 squares, each inlaid with deep blue glass and tiny hieroglyphs. It isn't just a game board, it's a piece of art. The owner, a noblewoman named Nebet, reclines on a couch draped in linen so fine it catches the lamplight. Around her, servants stand at quiet attention, and a pair of cats lounge like royalty, pretending not to notice the humans at all. Nebet gestures for a scribe to set the game pieces. They're exquisite, carved from ivory and lapis lazuli, polished until they gleam like drops of sky. You can almost hear them click softly as they're arranged in 2 neat rows. The scribe bows, steps back, and Nebet's smile turns sly. "Let's see," she murmurs, "if fortune still loves me." Her opponent tonight isn't another noble, but her own son, a teenager with a mischievous grin and a newly shaved head. He tosses the casting sticks and watches them fall, 2 flat sides up, 2 rounded sides down. The servants murmur approval. It's a lucky start. You sit nearby, unseen, and listen. Their conversation weaves through the air as naturally as the game itself. "You move too quickly," Nebet teases. "You think too slowly," he counters, sliding his piece forward. She laughs. "A wise player lets the gods think for him." The servants exchange small smiles. It's a familiar scene, half family ritual, half divine rehearsal. And that's the thing about the Egyptian elite. Everything, even leisure, echoed the divine order. The way they placed their game pieces mimicked the movement of souls through the afterlife. The safe squares represented rebirth, while the dangerous ones mirrored the trials of the Duat, the underworld. Historians still argue whether Senet's religious symbolism evolved naturally from gameplay or was intentionally layered by priests and scribes. But in a culture where every grain of sand belonged to a god, it's hard to imagine a truly secular pastime. You watch as Nebet lands on a square marked with a simple hieroglyph, the House of Three Truths. Her eyes flicker toward the carved figure of Ma'at, goddess of order and truth, whose feather decorates her necklace. She pauses, places a fingertip to the piece, and whispers a short prayer before rolling again. "Superstitious?" her son asks, grinning. "Respectful," she replies. "One day, you'll play this game against the gods themselves. Best to practice now." That line hangs in the air, soft but meaningful. A servant refills a golden cup, the faint aroma of fermented pomegranate drifting your way. Another adjusts a fan, stirring the night breeze. You can hear the slow lap of the Nile beyond the walls, a heartbeat of eternity just outside this bubble of luxury. In a corner, a musician plucks a few notes on a lute, careful not to interrupt the rhythm of the match. It's strangely hypnotic, the combination of rolling sticks, the faint tap of moving pieces, the occasional laugh. Time stretches, softens. You could almost drift off right here, lulled by the steady hush of wealth at play. As the game continues, Nebit's son grows more confident, his moves bolder, his grin wider. But the moment he teeters on victory, his mother rolls a perfect sequence, one that sends his best piece sliding backward, straight into the House of Water, a space that, depending on interpretation, represents purification or drowning. The boy groans dramatically. Unfair, you've played this game for years. And yet, she says sweetly, the Nile still decides who floats. Everyone laughs, even the guards at the doorway. That mix of pride and humility was central to the Egyptian worldview. Every triumph, every loss, both were gifts from something larger, something cosmic. The rich believed their success was proof of divine favor, but games like Senet reminded them that the gods could change the rules at any moment. You glance at the ornate board again, and suddenly it feels alive. Each square hums with quiet meaning. The grid isn't random, it's a map of existence. Birth, struggle, judgment, renewal. Some scholars think the game's path even mirrored the journey of the sun across the sky, east to west, life to death. Others claim it represented the soul's voyage from chaos to order. Historians still argue which interpretation is right, but maybe that's the point. In Egypt, meaning was always layered, like paint on a tomb wall. As Nebit claims victory, her son pretends outrage. You must have bribed the gods! She raises an eyebrow. Or perhaps they simply prefer experience. The scribe chuckles quietly as he records the match's outcome in a small papyrus ledger. Yes, even games here might be written down. Who played, who won, when, and under which omen. Because for Egypt's elite, memory was sacred. If something wasn't recorded, it might as well have never happened. After the match, Nebit gestures for a servant to bring out another board, smaller, older, cracked with age. This belonged to my grandmother, she says softly. When I play with it, I remember her voice. The boy looks at it reverently. Did she win often? She always said winning wasn't the point. Nebit smiles. It was learning how to move gracefully when the gods move against you. You can't help but think that's as good a life lesson as any. As you step back into the night, the courtyard behind you hums with fading laughter. The torches flicker low, their smoke curling toward the stars. Somewhere, the musician still plays his gentle tune, the notes wandering like moths through the dark. The game, you realize, is more than pastime. It's reflection, a quiet rehearsal for the afterlife, a lesson in patience, in poise, in accepting that even in victory, you're just one move away from starting over. And perhaps that's why the Egyptians loved it so much. The air cools against your skin. Across the river, a fisherman lights his lamp, its glow trembling on the water. Life moves on, steady and slow, each person a piece on their own invisible board, waiting for the next roll of fate. Dawn creeps across the horizon again, soft and gold, touching the temples first. The city stirs. Priests shuffle through corridors of cool stone, servants sweep the courtyards, and scribes sharpen their reed pens for the day's work. You find yourself drawn toward a building whose columns rise like papyrus stalks, a temple dedicated to Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. The air hums faintly with incense and distant chanting. Inside, the priests move deliberately, as though the entire world depends on precision, which to them it does. Order, Ma'at, isn't just a moral ideal, it's the foundation of existence. Every grain of sand, every sunrise, every carefully drawn hieroglyph plays its part in keeping the universe balanced. And, strangely enough, even games fall under that cosmic order. You watch as a group of junior priests gathers in a quiet corner near a row of statues. They sit cross-legged around a small table, the stone worn smooth from generations of use. A game board rests there, a senate, of course, though this one is different from the noblewoman's jeweled set. Its squares are painted with tiny figures, eyes, birds, and faint traces of ankhs. The eldest priest clears his throat. "Remember," he says, "this is not a game of chance. It is the path of the soul." You lean closer, intrigued. The young priests bow their heads, then begin. They toss the casting sticks, smooth slivers of wood that clack softly against the stone floor. The eldest priest recites as they move their pieces. House of rebirth, house of the waters, house of happiness. Each name corresponds to a square, each a step toward spiritual victory. Historians still argue whether this priestly senate was truly separate from the common version or just infused with added symbolism over time. Either way, what's unfolding before you looks less like play and more like meditation. One priest hesitates before his move. "If I land here," he murmurs, pointing to a painted square marked with a bird, "does that mean the Ba leaves the body?" "Perhaps," replies the elder, "or perhaps it means your spirit takes flight. The gods love riddles." He moves his piece anyway, and the others nod solemnly, as though a minor ritual has been completed. You can almost feel the weight of meaning settling over the game like desert dust. Each move becomes an invocation, each roll a reminder that life is uncertain, but the pattern, the board, is eternal. And isn't that exactly how Egyptians saw the universe? A carefully ordered pattern where souls, like tokens, pass from square to square under divine supervision, sometimes forward, sometimes backward, but always guided by unseen rules. As you observe, the eldest priest begins to speak softly about the afterlife, his voice a low rhythm, echoing against the cool stone. "When one dies," he says, "the soul journeys through the duat. The faithful who have played Senet well in life will recognize the path. They will not fear the unknown swears." You almost shiver. This isn't just metaphor. It's practical theology disguised as pastime. The young priests listen intently. One asks, "And what if the soul loses the game?" The elder smiles faintly. "Then it learns patience. Even the defeated are offered another throw." You can't help but grin. Somewhere between mysticism and humility, the Egyptians managed to make theology sound like gentle reassurance. Behind you, sunlight filters through narrow slits in the wall, catching motes of dust that swirl like glowing spirits. The sound of distant chanting blends with the clatter of sticks. The rhythm becomes strangely hypnotic. Soft, repetitive, like breathing. You drift deeper into the temple, where wall paintings shimmer in the half-light. There you see Thoth himself, ibis-headed, serene, holding a stylus and watching over a small human figure playing a board game. Opposite him sits another god, perhaps Ra, both engaged in divine contest. Below, hieroglyphs spiral outward like commentary. The game is eternal, and the gods play with time itself. You exhale slowly. It's both comforting and unnerving to think the entire cosmos might be a board, and the gods, the ultimate players. A scribe nearby notices your interest and murmurs, They say Thoth once invented the game of time. He offered it to the moon, who used it to win 5 extra days each year. He smiles faintly. That's why our year has 365 days. Even the calendar began as a game. You blink, half amused. So much for divine seriousness. Apparently, even gods enjoy bending the rules when they feel like it. That's the charm of Egypt. Everything sacred was also playful, and everything playful carried a trace of the sacred. The people here could laugh while invoking eternity, gamble while praying, or carve jokes beside hymns on a tomb wall. To them, the afterlife wasn't gloomy punishment. It was continuity, the next round in an infinite game. One priest laughs quietly as his piece reaches the final square. "I have crossed," he says, almost whispering. The elder nods approvingly. "Then tonight, you will dream well." It's an ending that feels less like triumph and more like release. Outside, the morning heat begins to rise, and you step back into the sunlight. The brightness blinds you for a moment, and the world smells suddenly of clay and river water again. Across the street, merchants shout, children chase goats, and life pulses with sound. You realize that while the priests treat Senet as sacred ritual, the people outside play for the same reason: connection, whether to gods, to each other, or just to pass the long hours between flood and harvest. The game fills the silence of eternity with laughter. You pass a boy scratching a crude grid into the dirt with a stick, muttering rules to himself as he plays both sides. He looks up, grinning. "Want to play?" You shake your head, smiling back. "Maybe next time." The boy shrugs, tosses a pebble for luck, and continues his game alone. His laughter echoes faintly as you walk away. And just like that, you can't help but feel that Egypt itself is one vast Senet board. Every village, every temple, every soul caught somewhere between beginning and end, between the throw and the next move. Maybe, you think, that's the quiet genius of the Egyptians. They turned even the mystery of death into something you could play your way through. Carefully, gracefully, one square at a time. You wake to the faint clatter of pottery and the low murmur of voices drifting through the warm morning air. The temple is behind you now, but its incense still lingers faintly on your skin, a reminder of how easily play can become prayer in this land. Today, you're following a different rhythm. The marketplace hums with life, and Egypt, as always, is wide awake. You wander through crowded streets, lined with merchants calling out their wares. Woven baskets, polished copper mirrors, piles of fragrant onions, and tiny scarabs carved from blue stone. Somewhere, a scribe sells small amulets, claiming to bring good fortune in games. You pause, watching him hold one up to the light, a miniature board engraved with 30 tiny squares. He catches your eye. "Ah," he says, "you play Senet?" You nod. It feels easier than explaining that you mostly watch people play Senet across centuries. He grins. "Then you must understand, luck is no accident. The gods need reminders." He winks, wrapping the charm in a scrap of linen and tucking it into a small pouch. 3 debens of copper, and Thoth will smile on your next throw. You chuckle. Even in the ancient world, marketing was an art. The idea that luck could be bought or blessed wasn't strange to the Egyptians. They wore amulets for everything: fertility, protection, safe journeys, good harvests, and yes, successful board games. In a society where fate and faith danced so closely, no one risked leaving things to chance. Historians still argue whether these charms were genuinely believed to alter luck or simply served as comforting talismans. But to the people here, it hardly mattered. Belief was the game itself. You drift deeper into the market, drawn by the scent of honey cakes and roasted chickpeas. The noise is soothing in its chaos. Haggling, laughter, the occasional bleat of a stubborn goat. A group of children squats near a doorway, using pebbles and broken pottery as makeshift game pieces. One girl frowns in concentration as she moves her shard. "You're cheating," she accuses. "I'm winning," her brother retorts. "Same thing," she shoots back, grinning. Their mother looks over, shaking her head fondly. "If you're going to fight over a game, make sure the gods aren't watching." It's half a warning, half a joke. But here, the gods are always watching. Even children know that. Nearby, an older man tells a group of travelers that playing Senet isn't just about skill or chance. It's about knowing when not to move. If you rush, he says, you'll anger the board. The board remembers. The travelers laugh, but he's serious. To the Egyptians, objects had memory, especially those carved with sacred shapes. A board used often enough could carry the energy of its players, just as a scribe's pen absorbed the power of words. Maybe, he suggests, that's why some tombs include broken game boards, to seal their magic, to prevent restless spirits from continuing their endless play after death. You can't help but imagine it. Spectral players in the dark, eternally rolling, eternally waiting for their final throw. A haunting image, but somehow, in Egypt's calm logic, it's not frightening. It's simply continuation. You stop by a potter's stall, where a woman paints a board's grid onto wet clay. She works quickly, her fingers steady. "These sell faster than jars," she says, not looking up. "People love their games. Keeps them from thinking too much." You tilt your head. About what? About the flood? The taxes? The afterlife? She shrugs. The usual. Her tone is matter-of-fact, but her hands move with reverence. The squares she paints seem to glow faintly under the sunlight. When she finishes, she presses a mark into one corner, a symbol of Hathor, goddess of joy. "So it remembers to be kind," she says softly. It's a strangely touching sentiment. Even a board, an inanimate grid, is treated with care. As the day grows hotter, you take shelter beneath a shaded awning where a group of men sit in the cool dust, playing Mehen, a spiral game said to represent the coiled serpent that protects the sun god Ra on his nightly journey through the underworld. The board looks like a snake, and the pieces are small lions carved from stone. You lean closer, fascinated. "So not Senet?" One player glances up. "Ah, the foreigner speaks," he smiled. "This one's older. The game of protection. You must reach the serpent's head without being swallowed." He laughs at your expression. "Not literally, of course. Unless you anger Ra." The board, hypnotic in its spiral, seems to hum with ancient symbolism. It's mesmerizing to watch. The players moving their lions slowly inward, one careful space at a time, toward the serpent's head. Historians still argue which came first, Senet or Mehen, but it's clear both carried spiritual weight. One traced the soul's journey through life and death. The other mirrored the sun's cycle of rebirth. Games weren't distractions here. They were mirrors of the cosmos. Every move reenacted a piece of the divine order, and yet they were also deeply human. Players argued, joked, and made small offerings of beer to ensure good luck. Even priests, on their off days, likely sat down with friends and muttered, "Just one more round." As you watch, one man makes a daring move, placing his lion on a dangerous square. The others gasp. then laugh when it pays off. He raises his arms in triumph. Ra smiles upon me today. The man next to him mutters, until tomorrow. You find yourself smiling again. The rhythms of play are universal. Competition, luck, camaraderie, the teasing that softens both victory and loss. As the sun dips, casting long shadows over the city, you walk back toward the river, passing a small shrine. Inside sits a single figure of Thoth, ibis-headed and serene, holding both a stylus and a small rectangular object. Maybe a scroll, maybe a game board, you can't tell. And perhaps that's intentional. To the Egyptians, wisdom and play weren't opposites. They were siblings. You pause, murmuring under your breath. The gods play too, don't they? The stillness answers you like a slow smile. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs, tossing a stick, watching it fall flat, 2 sides up, 2 sides down, and gasps at the luck. Life rolls on, endlessly, a pattern of moves, both small and cosmic. And just before you turn to leave, a stray breeze lifts a scrap of papyrus from the ground. On it, drawn in fading ink, are 30 tiny squares and a single word written in ancient script, Journey. You let it flutter away, thinking that maybe, just maybe, the game never truly ended. It only changed players. By now, you've crossed half of Egypt, through temples, taverns, and dusty marketplaces. And still, the game follows you like an echo. Every village seems to hum with. Every courtyard hides a board. The Nile glimmers like a silver thread, binding all these scenes together. A reminder that even play here is part of the sacred flow of life. Tonight, you're at the edge of Thebes, where the desert begins to swallow the horizon. A caravan has stopped for the night. Camels kneel in the sand, groaning softly while the merchants gather around small fires. There's laughter, the smell of roasted barley bread, and of course, the sound of clattering sticks. You sit near one of the fires, the warmth licking your skin, and watch 2 traders unroll a linen cloth. On it is drawn a crude but recognizable grid, 30 squares, hastily marked with charcoal. The tokens, pebbles, 1 light, 1 dark. The simplicity is beautiful, almost poetic. Senet, you ask? The older merchant grins, revealing teeth worn down from years of desert travel. Always, Senet, he says. You can take Egypt out of the board, but not the board out of Egypt. He laughs heartily at his own joke, and the others join in. He shakes the casting sticks, a hollow sound like bones rattling, and tosses them onto the sand. They land unevenly, one spinning before coming to rest. The players groan or cheer depending on the outcome, though you can't quite follow the rules. But that's part of the charm. The rules of Senet, even now, are half mystery, half memory. Historians still argue how it was played. Some think it was a race game, others a ritual of passing through symbolic stages of life and death. What they all agree on is this: the Egyptians loved it enough to carry it everywhere, from palaces to riverboats, from temples to border camps. Senet became a constant companion, a soft defiance against monotony and mortality alike. The merchant's wife joins him, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. He cheats, she says simply. He gasps theatrically. How can I cheat when the gods are watching? She smirks. The gods have seen you cheat before. The camp erupts in laughter. Even the camels seem amused, their long necks swaying lazily. You're struck by how naturally humor fits into this sacred world. The Egyptians weren't solemn mystics, lost in rituals. They were alive, aware of their fragility, and used laughter to keep fear at bay. A civilization obsessed with death, perhaps, but also deeply in love with life. As the night stretches, The older merchant begins telling stories between moves. Old tales that slip between myth and memory. They say the gods themselves played the first Senate. He begins, leaning forward so the firelight flickers across his face. Ra played against Osiris, and every throw decided a day in the year. When Ra won, the sun shone. When Osiris did, the crops grew. Someone interrupts, laughing, and when neither won, he grins. The sand blew, and the people waited. A ripple of amused murmurs follows. You can feel the rhythm of Egypt in that single line, waiting patiently while nature rolls its dice. A younger traveler pipes up. What happens if you lose the final square? Ah, says the old man, lowering his voice. Then you must play again in the afterlife. The gods do not release poor players easily. It's a joke, but one with that Egyptian weight of truth behind it. You look up at the stars, brighter here than anywhere else, and imagine all those ancient souls scattered across eternity, still playing, still waiting for their next turn. Maybe the afterlife isn't a destination at all, but another round of the same game, only quieter. One of the younger men nearby has been sketching in the sand. When the others pause for breath, he shows you his work, a board with spiraling paths, like a maze. A new kind of Senate, he says proudly. Maybe one day they'll play this in temples. The older man snorts. They already have too many gods to confuse. We don't need more squares. But the younger one persists. No, this version has a twist. The board changes shape every round. You must remember where your piece has been, or you're lost. You can't help but smile. Innovation, even now, in the middle of the desert. Humans never stop reshaping their games, nor their destinies. Later, as the camp quiets, the fire dies down to embers. You find yourself lying on your back, the cool sand beneath you, the stars above, so close, you feel you could reach out and move them like tokens. And that's when the thought hits you. This pattern of play, of laughter, of meaning is the true invention of the Egyptians. Not pyramids, not mummies, but the art of turning existence into a board game. A system where luck and will, chaos and order constantly roll against each other. You close your eyes. The sounds of the camp fade into the whisper of wind across the dunes. Maybe that's what Senate was always about. Not escape from the world, but understanding it. To play meant to participate, to step willingly into the game that was already happening around you. You drift on the edge of sleep, imagining that your heartbeat matches the rhythm of the casting sticks, the gentle clack, clack, clack of fate unfolding, one throw at a time. In the distance, someone rolls again, and the sound ripples softly across the sand. You smile, eyes half open. Another move, another chance. The night is vast, eternal, and utterly peaceful. Morning comes slowly, brushing the city with a warm, honeyed light. The Nile reflects it, catching every ripple like scattered gold. You wander again, tracing familiar paths, but noticing new details. The subtle curve of a merchant's cart, the faint scar of sunlight on a temple wall, the soft scrape of reeds as they sway in the breeze. And yet, amid this ordinary bustle, there is the ever-present echo of Senate, quiet but insistent, like a pulse beneath the sand. Today, you find yourself near a scribe's workshop, tucked between two low houses. Smoke rises from clay ovens, mingling with the ink-scented air of the small space. Inside, a young apprentice sits cross-legged, painting small boards with meticulous care. Each square is a perfect rectangle, outlined with careful precision. Tiny symbols fill them: ankh, bird, water ripple, and eye. You kneel beside him. These are for a temple? He shakes his head. No, for the new school. Every child must learn the game. It teaches patience, strategy, and respect for the gods. Respect for the gods in a board game. This is quintessentially Egyptian. Life and play were never separate. A token sliding across a square was more than just a move. It was a small act of devotion, a rehearsal for the eternal dance of Maat. Historians still argue whether Senet was first a secular pastime that gained ritual importance or a sacred game that trickled down into daily life. Watching these children, it's easy to believe both. Play becomes devotion. Devotion becomes play. The apprentice carefully moves a painted token across the board. If it lands here, he says, pointing to a square decorated with 3 small lines, you must pause and reflect. It represents the waters of chaos. He glances at you. Sometimes, life is like that too. You can't always move forward. A soft smile tugs at your lips. Pause and reflect. The lesson is simple, yet timeless. Beyond the workshop, a pair of elderly women play a similar game on a low table, one using smooth pebbles, the other small carved bones. Their conversation is punctuated with laughter and occasional gentle scolding. Don't rush. I'm not rushing. You are. Just admit it. And here's the whimsical part. One woman uses a tiny scarab as a piece and pretends it is alive, nudging it with a fingernail while making soft buzzing sounds. The other chuckles. It's a stubborn one, this scarab, she says. Very Egyptian. You realize the Egyptians had a particular fondness for small rituals, playful or serious, tucked into ordinary life. Even the smallest act could echo eternity. Walking further, you reach the riverbank, where a group of fishermen has gathered. Between casting nets and untangling ropes, they set up a simple senet board on a woven mat. Muddy fingers mark the squares, and rounded pebbles serve as pieces. The game is lively, filled with laughter, teasing, and playful accusations of divine favoritism. One fisherman lands a piece on a dangerous square, then mutters, "Ra, don't be cruel today." The others groan dramatically. "You've offended him already, I think." They laugh. It's almost identical to the noblewoman's games, minus gold and ivory. This is the beauty of Senet. From palace to riverbank, it mirrors the rhythm of life. Some moves are deliberate, others are lucky. Some fail spectacularly, but each throw carries lessons, reminders, and the faint possibility of grace. As the sun climbs higher, you notice a boy sketching a board in the sand. He is careful, methodical, tracing each square, marking tokens with small pebbles. You watch him for a while, the wind tugging gently at his hair. Every move seems deliberate, meditative. You realize the game has become a thread connecting generations. Children, merchants, priests, nobles, everyone partaking in the same subtle dialogue with fate, order, and play. Even the smallest pebble carries significance, a silent echo of gods, humans, and eternity. A heron lifts from the riverbank, wings wide and graceful, and you watch it glide across the water. For a moment, it seems almost like a token in a game, moving purposefully through the sky. You inhale the warm, fragrant air. Egypt hums around you, a living mosaic of devotion, laughter, and reflection. The game isn't just entertainment. It's life, distilled into 30 small squares, full of possibility, patience, and quiet wonder. As the river sparkles and children's laughter drifts faintly from the market, you feel that sense of gentle awe again. The awareness that life, like Senet, is both ordinary and profound, simple, yet infinitely layered. The late afternoon settles softly over the city, bathing rooftops in muted gold and shadows that stretch lazily across courtyards. The Nile glows quietly in the distance, reflecting sunlight in flickering patterns. like scattered tokens on a board. You wander along a narrow street, past merchants closing their stalls, and children chasing stray cats, drawn to a quiet courtyard tucked between mud brick houses. The scent of baked bread mingles with the faint aroma of lotus flowers someone has left near a doorway. Inside, a group of artisans sits cross-legged, their hands busy shaping clay and carving wood. In the center of the circle is a Senate board, modest but carefully made. Each square is etched by hand, uneven yet full of character. The tokens are small stones, painted with charcoal and red ochre, each one worn smooth from frequent handling. The artisans take turns tossing sticks to determine movement, their murmured incantations blending seamlessly with laughter. ... Watch closely, says one of the older men, his voice low but amused. The gods are more attentive than you think. You lean in, intrigued, noting how even in this casual setting, there's a subtle ritual in the way the pieces move. Each throw carries a weight, a hint of caution. Some squares are safe havens, others perilous, where a misstep might send a piece back several moves. The tension is playful yet tangible. Historians still argue whether Senet began as a strictly religious practice or as a game that gradually took on spiritual significance. Observing these artisans, it's easy to imagine both interpretations being true. Play is sacred, sacred is play, and in Egypt, the two were intertwined almost by instinct. A young apprentice nudges his stone across the board with a grin. I'm sure the gods are smiling on me today. Or perhaps just laughing, replies the elder, shaking his head. The others chuckle softly. One token lands precariously on a square marked with a small bird. The man who moved it gasps lightly. The Ba, he whispers. It must pause here to consider its path. His hand hovers, hesitating before continuing. It's a moment of quiet reflection, a pause that feels both weighty and whimsical. Nearby, a cat stretches across the courtyard, eyes half closed, indifferent to the unfolding drama. You can't help but notice how natural it all feels. Ritual and play, seriousness and humor, life and death, intertwined effortlessly. The Egyptians seem to understand that even small games could carry profound meaning. The elder begins recounting stories between turns. Senet is older than memory, he says. The first boards were said to be carved by Thoth himself. Every move echoes in eternity. The apprentice leans forward, fascinated, as if hanging on every word. Another artisan, pretending to consult the gods, rolls the sticks and frowns. I think Ra disapproves, he mutters. Everyone laughs, shaking their heads at the familiar theatrics of divine commentary. And yet, the lesson remains. Success is fleeting, failure is instructive, and the line between play and spirituality is fine, almost invisible. In a land where the afterlife was as real as the rising sun, even a simple game board could teach patience, humility, and strategy. The sun sinks lower, warming the courtyard with amber light. The players continue, soft voices murmuring instructions, light laughter echoing across the walls. Every movement feels deliberate, yet relaxed. A gentle meditation on motion, consequence, and chance. Outside, the Nile whispers faintly, a constant companion to the city's rhythms. The heron glides across its surface, wings wide, casting a reflection that shifts like a fleeting thought. The artisans glance up briefly, but then return to their game, caught in the timeless pleasure of play. Watching them, you understand something essential. Senet wasn't just a pastime. It was practice for life, a miniature cosmos, a way to navigate fortune, fate, and divine will, one small, deliberate move at a time. As you rise to leave, the courtyard settles into quiet, broken only by the distant laughter of children and the soft clatter of the last stick falling on sand. The city seems to breathe around you, steady and patient, as if waiting for the next throw. Evening drifts slowly across the Nile once again, turning the water into molten gold and the sky into a canvas streaked with pinks and purples. You walk along a quiet street, past closed market stalls and the occasional lantern flickering against the walls. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks lazily, its sound curling into the warm air. Tonight, you are drawn to a modest home where a family gathers for their evening ritual, the playing of senet. Inside, the room is dim, illuminated by a single oil lamp. The floor is covered with mats, and in the center sits a well-worn board. It's not gilded, not polished, not meant for display. It's for living. Its 30 squares are etched into wood, some faintly chipped from countless games. Tokens are small pieces of clay, each shaped differently by small, clumsy hands over time. A father adjusts the pieces, moving one back slightly. The gods favor patience, he says quietly, smiling at his daughter, who watches with wide eyes, and sometimes cleverness. The daughter giggles, picking up a casting stick. She tosses it gently. The pieces clack on the board. Her token advances. "I'm winning," she declares. "You might think so," her father teases, but fortune is a tricky companion. Historians still argue whether the game was meant primarily for divination or amusement. But in this home, it feels both. Each roll is a story, a lesson, and a moment of connection. The board is a mirror of life. Sometimes your piece progresses smoothly. Other times, it is set back, reminding you of the delicate balance between will and chance. The mother, who has been watching quietly, picks up a small piece of bread and whispers a short prayer over it before placing it on a square. "For protection," she says softly. "Even small offerings matter." You notice how seamlessly the domestic and the divine intertwine. Every move, every token, every roll is framed by the subtle awareness of forces beyond the room. The gods, luck, and the river itself. Play here is never trivial. It is an extension of the family's connection to life and eternity. A small cat curls around the father's legs, purring. You smile at its presence. It seems to embody the serenity of this moment. Even the animals, it seems, are participants in the gentle rhythm of Egyptian life. The daughter moves again, landing her token on a square marked with a small ripple symbol. She looks up, confused. "What does this mean?" Her father leans close. "The waters of life," he says, "sometimes smooth, sometimes turbulent. You must navigate them carefully." The girl nods solemnly, but her grin soon returns. Play, after all, is never devoid of joy. Outside, the last sunlight slips behind the horizon. A cool breeze carries the scent of river mud and lotus flowers into the room. The family continues their game quietly, intentionally, each moment balanced between laughter and contemplation. But even in this humble home, you can sense the subtle elegance of Egyptian culture, the integration of art, devotion, and everyday life. Senet is not merely a pastime, it is a bridge. It connects children to parents, humans to gods, the present to eternity. As you watch the final stick roll, your mind drifts with the rhythm, the gentle clack, the careful advance, the pause, the laughter, the sighs. The board is more than wood and clay. It is history, ritual, family, and philosophy in 30 squares. And in that quiet room, you realize that the game, at its heart, is a meditation. Life, like Senet, is a series of moves, choices, and small gestures, each carrying weight and meaning, each shaping the journey to come. Night falls softly, and the city is bathed in silver moonlight, reflecting off the Nile. The air is cooler now, carrying the faint scent of lotus flowers and river mud. You walk along a quiet alleyway, your footsteps muted on the sand, drawn to a small shrine tucked between two houses. Here, a solitary figure sits cross-legged, playing a miniature Senate board alone. The quiet clack of the tokens against the wood echoes faintly in the still night, a sound almost hypnotic. You pause, watching. The player is an elderly man, robes simple but neat, eyes focused, yet serene. He moves a piece deliberately, glancing at the squares as though consulting invisible guides. Each token carries meaning. Each throw is an invocation. Balance and order, he mutters softly. Always balance and order. Even alone, the ritual of the game transforms the space. He isn't competing, he is participating in a dialogue with fate, with the gods, and perhaps with his own past. Historians still argue whether solitary play had the same spiritual significance as group games, but in this moment, it feels as profound as any temple ceremony. A cat slinks across the floor, brushing his foot. The man smiles faintly and allows it to remain, as if acknowledging the animal as a silent witness to his devotion. He nudges a piece forward. The ba moves carefully, he says, voice low, but the heart must remain light. You notice the tactile joy in his movements, the smooth glide of tokens across the board, the small clatter when they land, the careful arrangement of squares. This is no longer mere pastime. It is mindfulness, meditation, and prayer wrapped into one gentle rhythm. Outside, a soft breeze rustles the papyrus reeds, carrying distant laughter and the occasional call of a night bird. The city is quiet, yet full of life, echoing the balance the man seeks on his board. He pauses, letting a piece rest on a square decorated with the symbol of Ma'at. Even in stillness, he whispers, order must be preserved. It is a reminder that patience is not passive, but active, deliberate, and mindful. You think back to the nobles' games, the priests' ceremonies, the children in the market, all moving tokens, tossing sticks, whispering prayers, laughing, learning. This solitary practice is no different. It is a continuation, a thread woven through every generation. The man rolls again, carefully, his hand steady. The token slides forward, landing on a square that symbolizes rebirth. He smiles faintly, his eyes closing as if the move carries him somewhere beyond the room. It strikes you then that Senate's enduring power lies not in competition or victory, but in presence. The attentive awareness of each move, each breath, each small decision. It teaches reflection, patience, and harmony, while reminding players that life, like the board, is both predictable and mysterious. As you step back into the night, leaving the courtyard behind, you feel a gentle rhythm in the world, a pulse connecting the city, the river, the stars, and all the small hands that have moved pieces across 30 squares for thousands of years. Even alone, even centuries later, the game continues, and somehow that thought is both comforting and quietly exhilarating. The pre-dawn air is cool, almost sweet, carrying the scent of wet sand and distant lotus blooms. You wander along the Nile's edge, watching the first fishermen push their boats into the slow-moving water, oars dipping and lifting with quiet precision. Somewhere upstream, a bird calls, echoing off the river's calm surface. And yet, in the distance, faintly, you hear the soft clack of a board game. Senate again, gently persisting, weaving through centuries of life like a quiet river current. You approach a small schoolhouse where students gather on mats outside. Their Senate boards laid in neat rows. They sit cross-legged, pebbles in hand, tossing sticks, moving tokens, murmuring softly to themselves. Their teacher walks among them, guiding hands, whispering advice, ensuring that every move is both deliberate and meaningful. You can almost sense the invisible thread linking these children to the nobles, priests, and artisans you've observed earlier. Remember, she says to one boy whose token lands precariously, the square is not your enemy. Think carefully. The gods may be watching, but patience is your ally. You smile, noticing that these lessons are repeated everywhere. Patience, careful thought, respect, humility. It's remarkable how a simple game carries such a weight of moral and spiritual instruction. How play becomes both classroom and temple. Historians still debate whether Senate's symbolism was strictly religious or a social tool for teaching strategy and ethics. From what you've witnessed across palaces, temples, homes, and markets, perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Play is never just play here. It is simultaneously rehearsal, reflection, and delight. A girl nudges her token forward and pauses, consulting the symbol on her square, a small depiction of a ripple representing the unpredictable waters of life. I must wait here, she murmurs, to consider my path. Her friends laugh softly, teasing, or just to buy time, but there is reverence in her eyes. The game is sacred and mundane at once, a reflection of everyday existence. Nearby, an older student nudges a piece with a deft flick. Ra has spoken, he says softly, smiling at no one in particular. His friends chuckle, but there's acknowledgement in the quiet murmur. The game is bigger than themselves, a small practice in aligning with order. You notice the materials the students use: clay tokens, ink-smeared boards, painted sticks. No gold, no ivory, but the devotion is equal. The essence of the game is not luxury. It is participation, presence, and awareness. Across the river, the sun rises higher, gilding the city in amber. Boats drift silent, merchants prepare for the day, and somewhere, a cat yawns and stretches atop a sun-warmed wall. Everything seems ordinary, yet imbued with subtle ritual, small echoes of the cosmic game unfolding across the land. One boy's token lands on a special square, and he lifts his hand, whispering, "Mehmet, guide me." The teacher nods approvingly, then turns to another student, repeating gentle guidance, balance, patience, and thought with each move. You pause, taking in the scene. The children, like all who have played before them, are not simply entertaining themselves. They are rehearsing life, navigating fortune, learning to reconcile order and chance, divine and human, simplicity and complexity, all through a quiet game of 30 squares. And as you step back, watching them, you feel a gentle rhythm threading through the city, the river, the air, the quiet heartbeat of Egypt itself, a civilization moving through life, one small, deliberate move at a time. The sun now dips low, brushing the horizon with molten amber, and you find yourself wandering back through familiar streets. The hum of the city softened by evening. The calls of merchants have faded, and children's laughter drifts faintly from distant courtyards. Shadows lengthen across the sand, creating quiet corners where the world seems to pause. Somewhere nearby, the familiar clack of a Senate board echoes soft like a heartbeat. Steady, reassuring, eternal. You enter a small courtyard where a group of friends has gathered around a modest board. The pieces are worn, tokens of clay and stone, yet the energy is vibrant. Each player leans forward, attentive, absorbed in the rhythm of movement, the throw of sticks, the push of a token across 30 squares that carry both meaning and memory. Careful, One whispers, moving a piece onto a precarious square. The Ba watches. The others nod knowingly, laughter restrained but present. You realize that even in play, there is mindfulness, and even in leisure, there is reverence. Historians still argue whether Senet was primarily a game, a ritual, or a mirror of the soul. But here, it's all of those things at once. The distinctions blur until you understand. Play, devotion, learning, and reflection are inseparable in this world. Every move is a meditation. Every roll of the sticks, a gentle negotiation with fate. A girl nudges her token forward and pauses, watching it settle. Sometimes, she murmurs, the gods are patient. Sometimes we must be patient ourselves. Her friend smiles, nudging his own piece lightly. Or lucky, he adds, half seriously. They both giggle, acknowledging the delicate balance between skill and fortune that has carried this game through millennia. Between skill and fortune that has carried this game through millennia. You lean back, observing the subtle choreography, the flick of a token, the soft clatter of sticks, the whispers, the laughter, the faint rustle of reeds in the evening breeze. Each gesture is deliberate, yet relaxed, part of a rhythm that has persisted since the earliest dynasties, from tomb walls to riverbanks, from temples to humble homes. The sun fades entirely, replaced by the gentle glow of a few lamps and the soft shimmer of stars above. The game continues, undisturbed by night, a silent testament to human creativity and curiosity. Even the smallest gestures, picking up a token, nudging it, releasing it, become acts of connection to each other, to tradition, and to the mysterious cosmos the Egyptians revered. You realize, then, that Senet, for all its rules and rituals, is ultimately about presence. To move a piece thoughtfully, to watch, to wait, to hope. These simple actions mirror life itself. The Egyptians didn't merely play. They practiced attention, patience, and reflection. They wove eternity into 30 small squares. The laughter subsides, the pieces rest, and the night embraces the city. You breathe in the cool air, listening to the distant ripple of the river, the occasional whisper of leaves, the faint memory of clacking sticks. It feels as though the world itself pauses, holding its breath with quiet contentment. And as you turn away, walking slowly into the soft darkness, you carry with you the subtle truth. Life, like Senet, is a series of moves, sometimes forward, sometimes back, but always part of a rhythm, always part of a game that stretches across centuries, gently connecting the living to those who have gone before and those yet to come. Now the city is quiet, bathed in the gentle glow of moonlight, and the Nile whispers softly, a steady, soothing presence beneath the stars. You sit or lie comfortably, letting your body relax, your breathing slow, feeling the warmth of the day fade and the calm of the night settle over you. The distant echoes of Senet boards, of tokens moving carefully across 30 small squares, drift through your mind like a lullaby, a rhythm that mirrors the pulse of life itself. You can almost feel the boards beneath your fingers, smooth worn wood or cool clay tokens, the soft clatter of sticks rolling, the faint laughter of children and adults alike, from palace halls to riverbanks, from temples to humble courtyards. Each move, each pause, each whispered prayer or soft chuckle blends into a gentle, flowing pattern, a meditation on presence, patience, and the quiet joy of simply being. Imagine the young and old, the merchants and priests, the nobles and artisans, all participating in the same game, following the same rhythm, connected across space and time. You feel the warmth of community, the subtle guidance of order, and the playful presence of the divine, all enfolding you, steadying you, reassuring you that life, like the game, is a series of small, meaningful steps, Let your eyes grow heavy. Feel your breath lengthen, soft and even, like the quiet movement of a token across a board. Know that in a way, you are part of this vast, gentle pattern linked to centuries of human curiosity, devotion, and playful wisdom. Every inhale is calm, every exhale releases tension, and each thought drifts further into the soothing landscape of memory and imagination. And as your eyelids close, imagine that the game continues softly, serenely, eternally, moving you gently toward the quiet spaces of sleep. You are safe, you are steady, and the world is, for now, at peace.